Hi everyone, welcome along to episode 8 of the Desire, Dream, Vision podcast. A massive thank you to every single one of you who's hit the subscribe button so far, and don't forget to hit that like button as well. Coming up today, we are joined by a gentleman who I've had the pleasure of working with on numerous occasions, an absolute legend, a former Arsenal and Everton legend. It's Mr. Kevin Campbell. We talk on some awesome subjects about how to keep yourself motivated and fuel yourself when you need that little bit of light at the end of the tunnel when things get tough. We talk about his career captaining Everton and of course being their fourth all-time greatest Premier League goal scorer. We'll also talk about his great escape from West Brom, among many other things as well. So stay tuned. I hope you like it. Once again, this podcast is brought to you in association with D'Artagnan Menswear in Chichester. Make sure you check them out. Spring is on its way and they've got some awesome ranges in there. So do go and pay them a visit via their website and also on Instagram. And make sure you check out their made-to-measure collection as well. Everyone needs a good suit, especially in the summer. Check it out. Well worth your time and having a look and having a chat with Matt and the team. But let's get on with it, shall we? This is episode 8 of the Desire, Dream, Vision podcast with Kevin Campbell.
Kevin Campbell, the legend that is, thank you so much for joining us on the DDV podcast.
Listen, it's a pleasure to be on with you, Michael, honestly, real pleasure.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. A question that I'm loving kicking off with at the moment is just checking in on people. Obviously, social media, everyone wants to give that happy face, but it's been a very difficult 12 months for us all. How are you? Are you getting on okay? I know it's been tough for everyone, but you're all good?
Yeah, I'm fine. I've been good. You know, I touch a bit of wood, I suppose. I know it's difficult out there, and everybody deals with these things differently. Michael, I've been lucky enough that I've been really busy. I haven't been busier, to be honest. You know, I've got certain projects that are on, still doing interviews, obviously online, etc. And, you know, it's still doing games and all sorts of different stuff's going on. So my days are pretty full. But I know there are other people who are really struggling, and it's tough out there, Mike. You're right. It really is tough.
No, it certainly is. How have you found that the world of football's adapted? You know, it's been great, I think, for a lot of people having football on television. It's been great to see you doing lots of the punditry on that as well. How's it been from your perspective, you know, doing your thing inside an empty stadium and obviously the new rules that are in place?
It's difficult to get used to, you know, going into a football stadium and to cover a first team game with, you know, bare minimum people around, listening to the voices on the pitch and stuff. It's like the old reserves, you know, it's crazy, but it must, I suppose, because it actually really helps a lot of people on the outside still connect to the football and their football clubs. But it's not the same without the fans, Michael, is it? It's not the same.
No, and there's some good news in the papers this week. So if you're listening to this in the future, this week we had some good news that fans will, fingers crossed, be back in by the end of May as well. So fingers crossed that happens. Right, let's delve back then into your career, into your story, how you've achieved everything that you have, because it's an amazing story and I absolutely love it. Where did it begin for you? When did Kevin Campbell decide football's my thing? I'm quite good at this. I want to give this a go.
Well, you know, like any kid, you know, jumpers for goalposts or whatever, you have the ambition to play football. I was lucky enough. I had older brothers who played football, and round the corner from where I lived was Andy Gray. Andy Gray, who played at Crystal Palace with Ian Wright and Mark Bright, and, you know, went to the Aston Villa, etc. He lived round the corner, and I was good mates with his brother. So he was kind of the first person I kind of knew who was trying to get into the game. And, you know, listening to his stories and that, you know, it was amazing going to different football teams, and he was telling us what it was like. So I was always looking up to him. Obviously watching Cyril Regis and the 3 Degrees at West Brom and all these other different players, you know, kid from Brixton, you know, I could relate to these guys. But Andy Gray was actually living it like me, live around the corner, I could touch him, feel him, you know, he was just there. So it was brilliant. So that's where it all started in Brixton. I always wanted to be a footballer. And obviously you're young, you're playing football, and then you get to secondary school and things start to get a little bit more serious when you're in the school team, and then you start to get trials for South London, etc. And then scouts were starting to clock you. So it was really interesting times back then.
No, completely. And of course, the world of football has changed massively since, when you were getting into the academies. The academy systems these days, these kids walk through the door and they're treated like a professional and, treated like a superstar from day one. For you, though, you were a product of the Arsenal Academy, which was kind of almost a leader at the time as well, wasn't it? Talk us about your experience with Arsenal.
Well, when I signed for Arsenal at 12. I supported Arsenal as a boy. Signed for Arsenal at 12 years old. So for me, I stood on the terraces. My first game was 1977. So I stood on the terraces at 7 years old. So, to look at that green baize of a pitch and think to myself, I'm going to be a part of this club one day. It's a dream. Fast forward, get to 12 years old, get signed for the club, which was great. You imagine, your first day in, you get into the club and you're a bit apprehensive. You get in, and the coach who's coaching you is Pat Rice, Vic Akers. Pat Rice, captain, lifting the FA Cup and all that. He's the main coach. You got Vic Akers there as well. So look at that esteemed talent and people who have been through it, who are coaching you. It was incredible. And there was a load of players who I knew. There was some I didn't know. But it was a great feeling around Arsenal at the time because there was so much talent coming through the ranks at Arsenal at the time. It was incredible. And there's nobody better to guide you than Pat Rice, somebody who'd come through the ranks himself.
Yeah, how did you find that? Was that a little bit overwhelming on your first day with these icons that you had kind of idolized a little bit? And then I guess after that moment, if it was a little bit of, oh my God, what am I doing here? What was it like learning off those people? Because I sometimes hear, you meet your idol and they're going to be a coach, but it doesn't quite live up to your expectation. How was that for you?
Well, Pat Rice, there was no bedding in period. You were straight in, no messing around. And Pat Rice has got such a good way about him. He incorporates, you into everything. If you knew, there was players who'd been there because we were training 2 age groups. So there were older players. So you incorporated pretty seamlessly, to be honest. So it was great. And learning off guys like Pat Rice, listen, the guy knows it all. He'd been there, seen it, done it, captained the club, lifted trophies. So if you can't learn off somebody like him, you might as well jack it in. And he was incredible for me from the age of 12 right until I left the club, to be honest. And he was always been a really, really sound man as well. Not only coach and manager at the time of the youth team, he's an incredible guy.
You're incredibly prolific as well. If I'm right in saying in one season you got 59 goals and you won the FA Youth Cup as well in '88. What was that like for a young player like yourself? You're scoring these goals, attention is going to start coming your way, whether it be from the first team coaches having a look at you. How did you deal with that and that expectation of once you're starting to score these goals, people then go, hang on, we need you to score some goals there. And there becomes, I guess, a dependence on it, doesn't it? And you pressure on yourself to keep doing it.
Yeah, I think the most important thing, Michael, was a lot of the time I was training with the first team. And when you're 17 years old and you're training with the first team, you're training against that back four with John Lukic first, and then obviously Dave Seaman came later. But you're training with that back four and back five at times. You can only improve. You can only improve. And any new player, I think Steve Bold, when he first joined the club, George Graham said, right, we're going to have to get you up to speed. You're going to have to go against Kev Campbell. And he's thinking, who is this Kev Campbell? And next minute he said, he saw me coming around the corner, thought, who is this? He's a youth team player. So that gave me a bit of confidence. The manager liked to do that. Gave me confidence, gave him confidence, being part of that back four. And it worked out really well for us. And yeah, there is a bit of pressure, but listen, you play for Arsenal, there's pressure, which no matter where you are, there's pressure. So I wanted that pressure. I wanted that pressure of people saying, you're the man, you're the one who's going to have to score goals. And, you only get 2 opportunities to win the FA Youth Cup. Out of all the youth teams in the country, and this is going into non-league, you only get 2 opportunities to win it. And we were fortunate enough, we had a squad strong enough to go and win it in 1988, which was brilliant.
Would you put that up there as one of your biggest achievements? I know you've won the European Cup Winners' Cup, and there's been a couple other honours in there as well, but obviously a league title as well. But do you rate that FA Youth Cup as one that's right up there?
Of course. I mean, it's the first gong for Arsenal. You know, it's because when you have 2 years of YTS as apprentice, and the first year you kind of learning the ropes, and you're 16, 17. And then you've got the 17, 18-year-olds, and 17, 18-year-olds are trying to get a pro contract, etc. So at times you're not even playing most of the time. You're learning the ropes, and then obviously the second year, you know everything. You know what's needed to be done. So you're at that stage now, and you know you got to take the mantle and take the pressure. And to be honest, we had a really good team. You know, you sprinkle in a little bit of Andy Cole. He came in and played one game against Southampton at the Dell. You sprinkle in Neil Heaney, who came in and played a couple of games as well. So, you know, that's the lads who are just coming through. They're not even part of that youth team. They've been plugged in because we had injuries. So it was a conveyor belt of talent, really was.
Incredible. Something I noticed as well, before you kind of really embedded yourself in the Arsenal first team, you went out on a few loan moves. How did you find that, and how was that decision process? I know it's something we've seen, you know, players like Harry Kane and players like that do in the kind of modern game. But for you, Arsenal fan, you want to be in that first team, but someone says, we're going to send you out on loan. Did you see that as a challenge to improve yourself, or was there a little bit of, no, I want to be in the first team?
No, I wanted to play first team football. And that was the only thing that anybody could level against me was you ain't played first team football. And probably the great thing that happened was there was a lot of young players ahead of me who were older than me. The likes of Paul Merson was starting to play in the first team. Alan Smith had come to the club. You know, Martin Hayes had scored 20-odd goals. You know, you had Michael Thomas, who went to the same school as me, years older. Dave Rocastle, you know, Tony Adams, all these guys, Niall Quinn, all these guys were in and around the first team. And I was a couple of years behind them. So it's difficult to dislodge them then. So I had to get some experience. So I remember Jules Graham pulled me and said, look, you're too good for the reserves, but you're not quite there with the first team. I want to send you on loan. So he said, I want to send you to Leyton Orient. So I said, right, when do I go? And he looked at me and said, hold on a minute. I said, no, I know Leyton Orient. When do I go? And I didn't even look at the league. They were second bottom of the league, the old fourth division. You know, but I didn't care because I just wanted to prove myself. I was hungry to prove myself. I went to Leyton Orient, and you know what? I absolutely loved it there. You know, we trained in the local under Frank Clark, trained in the local park. You know, there were some right characters there. John Sitton was captain, and I'm sure people have seen his video when he was manager. You know, offering players out in the dressing room. That's what he was like. But he was a brilliant captain. He really, really was a good captain. And I learned so much in that division. And we kind of all came together. And that was the first year of the playoffs. The loans was only 3 months then, Michael. So I was there for 3 months. I came back to Arsenal. But the team had picked up momentum. And they got to the playoff final. I went to the game and they won the playoff final, which was incredible. So I was so proud of them, you know, when I watched it. And then that was 1989. And then obviously after that, the first division league went on longer because of Hillsborough, etc. Then I travelled with the team up to Anfield for 89. And Arsenal won that on the Friday night. So what a summer I had. It was brilliant. Next season, I went to Leicester. So George Graham, he's smart. He said, you're nearly there. He says, but I want you to go to Leicester. Now, Leicester were second division. Arsenal were in the Division 1. So if I could cut it at Leicester, I know the next stop's Arsenal. So I said, yeah, no problem. So I remember I went to Leicester, and another great club, good players there. You know, linked with Gary McAllister, who was sitting in the midfield, a brilliant player, and ended up doing pretty well there, and came back and was part of the first team squad at Arsenal. Wanted to prove myself. I went away, I proved myself, and then I came back and George Graham said, right, now you're part of the squad fully. So, you've got to earn your stripes, Michael.
You certainly have. What was that conversation like then when you get told you're involved with the first team squad? Here's your shirt. You're playing for Arsenal.
Well, it's a big smile, I could tell you that much. There's a big smile. Sometimes I would travel, sometimes I wouldn't. But the fact of the matter is the managers put you as part of the first team. You're not changing in the reserve dressing room anymore. You're changing with the first team players now. I think our tops at the time were like a purple. The first teams was red. You know what I mean? So I'm putting on the red top now and all that. It's brilliant because that's what you want as any kid who comes through. You want to make it in with the big boys, and I made it in with the big boys through hard work, which was great.
You certainly did. Talking about mixing it with the big boys, Arsenal is well known for some of the big name players, including your name in there, that have played for the club. How did you deal with that as a striker with other players coming in, like the likes of Ian Wright, and you had Bergkamp and Hudson? There were always big name players in and around that Arsenal side that obviously included you. But how did you deal with the competition of that and build those relationships and partnerships with players like Ian Wright?
Yeah, I think when you're at a club like Arsenal, you have to accept that they're going to challenge. You're going to be challenged. Arsenal are a club, back then especially, were really forward thinking. Competition was everything. And the more competition that you had was the better that you had to perform. Because Michael, if you don't perform at a big club like Arsenal, you're out. So you had to be hungry, and you had to be focused. And you imagine, I won a title at 21, and then the next summer I picked up an injury in pre-season, and the club bought Ian Wright, and I was out of the team. So then you have to say, right, I've got to try and reinvent myself. So they bought Wrighty. I had to go on the training ground and try and be a bit more like Alan Smith. So I learned a bit more, and I then became a foil for Alan Smith, a foil for Ian Wright, and at times George Graham played the three of us with Paul Merson, etc., etc. So had to be adaptable, had to be flexible, and there's going to be competition for places.
What would you say would be your key highlight from your time at Arsenal? Obviously, there was the semi-final against PSG when you scored in the European Cup Winners' Cup. Was there a particular moment that really stands out for you from your time at Arsenal, considering, of course, it was your boyhood club?
Yeah, I think my first game at Highbury and coming on and scoring it in front of the North Bank, could never take that away from me, Michael. I stood on the North Bank, and for me to score a goal in front of the North Bank was special. All the other times at the club obviously are special, but that moment is you've arrived. Then I've arrived, and I still think about it to this day. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Incredible. Off the back of Arsenal, you then moved, of course, to Nottingham Forest. How difficult was that period for you? Because I'm guessing if you had the choice, you would have maybe wanted to play your whole career for Arsenal. But a conversation of need to look at a move. How did that go down, and how did you feel?
Well, it was Arsenal were kind of in a bit of transition then, because George Graham had got the sack. Stuart Houston took over as temporary manager, and I was injured. And, got to the end of the season, and then Bruce Rioch was named manager. So I had one meeting with Bruce Rioch, and we didn't see eye to eye, to be honest. It was a very short meeting. So because my contract was up, I could look wherever. So, this was a business decision. It was still love Arsenal. Of course I do, that goes without saying. But it's about business, and I knew Dennis Bergkamp was coming to the club, etc. And obviously Ian Wright was the main man. There were times where obviously I wouldn't play, or I'd be playing out of position, and I wanted to play down the middle. So I had to look elsewhere. And Nottingham Forest under Frank Clark, they just sold Stan Collymore, or were in the process of selling Stan Collymore to Liverpool. So, I'd worked with Frank Clark at Orient, and that's how that move came up.
Yeah, and how did you find it playing for Forest? I think there was a relegation there, wasn't there? And then you come back up and
yeah. First season was fine. Yeah. So it was first season was fine, done okay. Suffered a couple of injuries. Second season was terrible. We started pretty well, and then we fell away terribly. We were decimated by injuries, etc. But there's no excuses. We just weren't good enough, Michael, and we ended up getting relegated. Harry Bassett came in as a director of football, I think, just before the end of that season. And then he took over as manager the third season. And that was the rebuild. And we had the players. We knew we had the players. We just needed a manager and the direction. And Harry Bassett done it. He really refocused us. And we ended up winning the championship and looking forward to a campaign back in the Premier League. And then all hell broke loose.
I want to touch on your next move after that, because obviously you went to Turkey. And you weren't there too long at the club, and there was obviously a racism issue there which involved the club's president. And it's something that I really struggled to get my head around, because I can't understand how anyone can have an issue with someone because of their ethnicity. I don't get it. For me, if my judgment on a person is whether they're a nice person or not, and it baffles me and it upsets me that we live in a world that we've still got to deal with these things. How did you deal with that period of your career? And obviously that move, because there's disappointingly there's a light on it again now, because we haven't sorted ourselves out. How did you deal with that time? Because that was been incredibly difficult for you personally.
Well, I've got to set the record straight, Michael, because there's a lot of untruths spoken. The chairman, the president, did not racially abuse me. Let me just tell you that now. What he said was, a term in Turkish that the press got hold of and spun it to make it sound like he racially abused me. Because what he said was, so imagine we're playing a game and the press asked him after the game, what about Campbell? And he said, the next team Campbell's going to eat them, meaning I'm going to do really well. Yeah. So you see where he said, I'm going to eat them. The press spun it and said he called me a cannibal, a black cannibal or whatever. So that's how it blew up. Now, obviously, my Turkish ain't great, and I couldn't understand it. But when I'm speaking to my teammates and my friends in and around Trabzon, they're telling me, no, he's not. They're explaining to me what he's actually said. And then you realize that it's the press. Because what you got to understand, Michael, is after every training session, there's between 80 and 160 press every day. They have column inches to fill, 4 pages a day Trabzon have. So it's one of those clubs where, one mistake can blow up. And that's what happened. It blew up and it became an international situation. I got a call from the British consulate in Turkey asking if I'm okay. And I said, yeah, I'm fine. And they said, things like this can escalate and be very difficult. So it became a difficult time for me. But I knew that he never said what the press said he said. And I ended up getting suspended from the team. At the time we were like third in the table, a few points off the top. We were going fine. And, it kind of blew up. And I found myself not training with the team. I was training 3 times a day. I was training with the under-21s, etc. And I'm not out there not to play. I've got to be playing. So that's where, the feelers were put out for teams who needed a striker back in England in that March window. So it was a difficult time because I don't think I played for probably 6 weeks. So it was difficult.
During your whole career, we'll just touch on the Black Lives Matter. Was it something that you had to deal with during your career?
All my life, yeah. All my life. And it's crazy, Michael, because, when you're growing up in the 1970s and it's there. And, you get to the 80s and then you start to become a pro and you're having to deal with it throughout your career. And then you kind of see a turn. It's not so prevalent. It's not so in your face. And then you're coming on and you get to the late 80s, 90s, and things are starting to move on. Premier League kicks in, things start to change a little bit, you know. All of a sudden, social media's there, and you're starting to see it creep in a little bit in social media. Now, I've retired, I've got a son who plays, and we're still having to deal with it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Honestly, it makes no sense. But it has to be dealt with. You got to look at, do we do enough? No, we never do enough, because it shouldn't be allowed. We know it's part of society, which is one thing, but in football is such a catalyst for change that if you could change it in football and stamp it out in football, a lot of it will spill over into, you know, the community. But I don't think we do enough in football. We do a lot of talking, but not enough doing. So, you know, don't tell me, show me, kind of thing. And I don't think the authorities do enough.
I think there's definitely room, isn't there? And hopefully over the next few months we can keep shining the spotlight on this and come up with some solutions and get it fixed. As I say, it's there's no room for it in our game, and there's no room for it anywhere. So fingers crossed there's going to be some solutions on the table soon. Let's talk about Everton, because I know this is a club that is another club that's very close to your heart. You were the first black captain of Everton. You're the 4th top goal scorer in Everton. Some great records there. And I know it's a club that you love. Talk us through your time there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I love that club so much. I think obviously after what happened in Turkey, I think there were 5 clubs interested in me. The first name that came out was Everton. And I said, stop there, that's the club. Because I made my debut against Everton. My league debut in '88 against Everton at Goodison, and it was a crazy experience, Michael, because at the time there was a racist element at Everton, and you know I was racially abused. There was 5 black players on the pitch at the time, and we got racially abused before the game, during the game, you know, not after, weirdly enough. But obviously, when you start to move forward, things change at certain clubs, and obviously, I've been back to Goodison Park and didn't get racially abused or whatever. So I know what type of club it is. It's a huge club. So I didn't hesitate to go there. And the connection was kind of instantaneous. I took to the fan base. The fan base took to me. I know the fans are the very clever fans. They're not, you know, if you give your lot, if you give your all, you know, they respect that. I got the number 9 shirt as well, which means a lot to Evertonians, so it's a lot to live up to. When you look at some of the players who wore that shirt, you know, it was incredible. Some of the mystical number 9 powers rubbed off on me, and I could help them stay up in my first loan spell at the club. Ended up scoring 9 goals in 8 games. We stayed up, and then it was a matter of, you know, that summer, because I was due back to Turkey, seeing if we could do a deal, and gladly we could do a deal. And we got it sorted, and I became a permanent Everton player.
I love that. And you kind of say that fan reaction, that fan love, like when you go back to the club now, I think that's incredibly special. I guess that's real testament to you as a person, as a player, and as a character, isn't it? Because that must be incredibly special for you when you kind of walk out that Gladys Street end on a match day. And I've been at the stadium when you've been there, and you know the reception you get is just incredible.
Yeah, I think. You know, all the Evertonians, what they say to me is, if it weren't for you, I said, listen, I'm part of the team. No, if it weren't for you, you know, God knows where we'd have been. But I needed the Evertonians just as much as they needed me, Michael, because it was, as I said, it was a difficult time at the back end of my time in Turkey, and they gave me an opportunity. And the connection, as I said, was instantaneous, and it's still the same to this day. Anytime I'm in Liverpool, any Blues I come across, you know, there's just so much love there. And it's great to see them happy. It's great to see Carlo Ancelotti there. Great to see Big Dunk doing a great job there. And it's great to see the club moving in the right direction. It really is, you know, got the rubber stamp to build the new stadium on Bradley Moore Dock. So it's incredible what's happening at the football club. And, you know, I feel special to still feel a part of it, even though I'm not at the club.
Let's talk about the captaincy, because I think that's something that's incredibly special for a footballer to be told, you know, you're the captain of the team. How did you take that role? What did you learn from that role? And did you feel prepared for it, or was it one you had to learn on the job?
No, I think the manager at the time was Walter Smith. I think to myself, because Davy Weir was captain, was Dave Watson, and Davy Weir then became captain. And Davy Weir was a good player. It wasn't maybe as vocal as some players, but he was a good captain. He led by example, etc. But I just think I had quite a bit of influence in the dressing room. Even though I wasn't captain, a lot of people came to me because I'd learned from the best. Tony Adams, Stuart Pearce at Forest, Tony Adams at Arsenal was incredible captain. So I'd learned from some real top captains, and that's the way I conducted myself. I always conducted myself in the right way, tried to anyway. And when the manager came to me and said about captain, I said, but, Davy Weir's captain. He said, no, it's already spoken to Davy Weir. Davy Weir said, he wants me to have it. So I was like, wow, really? So we said, yeah, what do you think? So I said, yeah, I'll definitely take it. And I think that was testimony to, obviously, the squad at the time who welcomed me as their captain. It was a very, very proud moment for me.
Post Everton, you obviously went to West Brom, and there was a nice little great escape moment in there as well. But you finished your career at Cardiff. And I just want to talk about that moment when you have the realization of, I think this is it. The time has come. My career is done. How did you compute that? How did it happen? And how did you find it? Because I've spoken to some athletes and former footballers that found it incredibly tough. And from going from that training regime every single day, being around the dressing room, to then almost being on your own. How did you find it?
The summer I joined Cardiff, I thought I was going back to West Brom. The chairman pulled the contract at West Brom because I was looking to go on player, coach. So I was going to start doing my badges at West Brom under Brian Robson, Nigel Pearson, Craig Shakespeare was there, Michael Appleton was there, Darren Moore was there. So you could see the lineage of managers and coaches. So I was going to go in as player coach, but that contract never worked out. So I remember I left there. It was no disrespect to Brian Robson or anybody, but it was down to the chairman. So I thought, no problem. What was I? I was 36 at the time. So I remember going home, and I got home. I was still fit, but I thought to myself, you know what? Maybe it's time, because I don't necessarily need to beg anybody for a contract or whatever. So I was still training. I kept myself fit, but I just put it down to football's going that way, and here I am. I don't need to chase anybody because I don't necessarily need it. And the last week of pre-season, I'm in the garden. The kids have got friends round and all that. And my phone goes, and it was Sam Haman on the phone. And he called me and he said, I've got Dave Jones for you. Dave Jones come on the phone, was speaking to me about Cardiff. And I said, it's the week of the season, Dave. I love Dave. He's a great guy. Good Evertonian as well, has played for the club, etc. And he just said, look, we need some professionalism down there. We need some experience to help some of these youngsters. And that's what he said. So I said, look, I'll come down and I'll meet you. So I went down there, met them, and Dave and Sam convinced me to come for a season. So I said, all right, then let's do it. So I went down, and it started off really well. It was a great club, great place, superb fans, really passionate. And then we get to Christmas time. Sam Mansell sells the club. He sells it, and Peter Ridsdale comes in. So, there's a bit of, imbalance with the squad and injuries kicking, because we didn't have the biggest squad. And, we were top of the league for a good spell, but couldn't sustain it because we couldn't bring the bodies in. And at the end of that season, I knew, this is it. This is it for me. And technically, Michael, I haven't retired, but then I knew.
Yeah.
But I've already been involved in business previous anyway. So I had a business already going. So leaving football wasn't that big a wrench that I didn't have something to fall into.
100%. I want to touch on international football. Cap for England under 21s, for England B as well. I think it was a bit like, if we look at the England midfield right now, at that period that you were playing, we were blessed with an embarrassment of riches almost with strikers, weren't we? We have some amazing players that, were fighting for you for an England shirt. Did you personally feel there was anything else you could have done more to get that England call up, or did you just feel it just wasn't meant to be? Because you were on standby for one game, weren't you? Against Spain, I think it was.
Yeah, I mean, I was involved in squads and all that kind of thing. I think it was about 5 squads I was involved in, but I didn't get a cap. So there's nothing I could say. I hope it weren't the way I trained, Michael. I hope it weren't the way I trained. You know, it's just one of them things. You know, it's now turned me into a trivia question. You know, being involved with the squad, etc. But not getting a cap. But it's the way it is, and that's life. I don't take anything back. You know, it is what it is. I played the way I did. I played for Arsenal. You know, loved playing for Arsenal. Obviously, that my club, still support the club until the day I die. But it just didn't quite work out for England, and that's just one of those things.
Sometimes things are meant to be like that, aren't they? But say an amazing career on the field for you. Right. Let's talk life post-football now, because I know we've had discussions before, and you do some work with younger players and kind of helping them mentally about their game and improving them as footballers. I want to touch on that first of all. How do you find that, and do you find that quite rewarding to work with these younger players and help guide them and advise them?
Yeah, I find that so rewarding. Not only rewarding for them, but it's rewarding for me to be able to use my experience not only on the boys, but on the parents as well. I think that's really important, to put some perspective to the parents, because, you know, the game has changed, and, you know, there's a lot of pitfalls. There's a lot of going back to an old game, which was snakes and ladders. You know, there's ladders, but there's also a lot of snakes, and things could take you downhill very quickly if you don't make the right decisions. And I think being able to help the families means a lot to me, and having a son and who's gone through it, and then another son who's coming up, you know, I would give them the same advice if they weren't my sons. You know, this is really important for me, about being impactful and being consistent with the help. I think that's important.
How do you find that relationship with your sons then, especially Tyrese? Obviously, I think this season 6 goals in 16 games for Stoke, so he's on a good little goal scoring run. Is he going to be prolific as his dad? But how do you find that relationship and that advice? Because I guess it's always tough, isn't it, when your dad's been a Premier League footballer who's been pretty decent, and then you're going into that game. There's going to be some expectation from the media. You're going to put pressure on yourself, going, I want to be as good as dad. I don't want to let him down. You know, how have you found that relationship and that?
No, he wants to be better, Michael.
Is he good?
Michael, Michael, look, he wants to be better. He wants to smash all my records out of the park, which is what I love. Which is what I love, Michael. Obviously, was at Man City, left Man City, went to Stoke because of obviously the pathway. Found it very difficult because in 18 months to 2 years, he had 4 managers. You know, it's crazy. Then after 2 years, the 5th manager came in, and he was pretty close to leaving the club. Ended up, the new manager gave him a chance, stayed there, signed a new deal, was doing really well this season, then got injured, and he's out for the season. So, you know, he's gone down, he's gone up, and now there's that down, which is the life of a footballer. It's a roller coaster. So this will help him mentally. Don't want him to be injured. He don't want to be injured, but it's going to help him mentally, because do you know what? When you take football away, you find out how much you actually love the game. And, you know, just by looking at him and seeing the way he is, he loves this game, and he can't wait to get back playing and scoring goals and making assists at Stoke. So it's never easy, because he's always going to get judged. You know, your dad was this, your dad was that, but as I say, he wants to bury me, I love that.
Amazing. It's nice to kind of see that. There's a bit of nice friendly rivalry there, and see how he's going to get on. But no, I wish him a speedy recovery, and hopefully see him back on the pitch very soon. And that brings me on to one of the key principles, actually, of Desire, Dream, Vision. And a big thing for me is that failure is so important. You have to fall over. When you learn to walk, you fall over and you get back up again. You don't just lay there and go, I'm not up for walking. Just bring me food and water, and I'll just lay here for my whole life. How do you deal with failure and picking yourself up again? And also, I'm guessing it'll be a similar answer of how you advise people and advise the players to, when you hit that moment where you've fallen over, how do you get yourself back up again?
Well, for me, it was always pretty simple, to be honest. I always focused on what I wanted, and there's going to be obstacles. There's going to be people who's going to be telling you can't do it. But I always use that as fuel. I use the obstacles as fuel. I use the negative comments as fuel to push me towards it, because there's nothing better, Michael, than proving people wrong. Nothing better. That humble pie, sticking it down people's throats and say, there you go. So you have to use whatever you can as fuel. And that's what I've done. And I still use it to this day. There's still obstacles. There's still hurdles to get over, under, around, through. But you've got to use everything as fuel to propel you forward. That's my goal. That's where I'm going. And nothing's going to deter me from it.
I love that. Fuel. It's really interesting. Last week when we had Joe McHale on a couple of weeks ago, he said with rejection and disappointment, he treats himself like a ping pong ball and just bounces off it and just keeps going and keeps going. So that's really nice. Another layer of that, of just keeping yourself fueled up. That's awesome. Next question is peak and pit. What's been the highlight of your career and what's been a low light of your career? But they're two moments that you wouldn't change, because even the low light, you learned something from.
Well, the highlight of my career, there's so many, Michael, turning professional, playing for Arsenal, winning trophies at Arsenal, etc. But I think the most important thing I've done was the Great Escape with West Brom, because everybody wrote us off, bottom at Christmas and bottom at New Year. You're guaranteed to go down. Everybody said you're guaranteed to go down. So, and then I was made captain of that team, and we ended up staying up. So, in my football career, at Arsenal, you're expected to win stuff. At Everton, you're not expected to go down, etc. But this West Brom squad, nobody gave us a chance, and we done it. We made history. We're the first team to ever do it. I was captain of that team. So, yeah, that's probably the peak.
Yeah, and the low light?
I suppose relegation. I think relegation is always a difficult one to take. In whatever way, shape, or form it comes, it's not nice, and a lot of people lose jobs. A lot of people lose faith. It's very difficult for the football club, etc. So I think relegation is a very difficult one to take, and that's definitely the low light.
What inspires you when you get to a moment when, we've just been talking about you've got to use it as fuel, but when you get there, was there ever a person that inspired you? I know for me it's people like Muhammad Ali was a massive inspiration for me. Did you have a figure or a person or something that really inspired you and still does?
Yeah, I think Muhammad Ali was always a figure back in the day, because of what he stood for. Not only was he a boxer, but he was a sporting icon and a global icon. But it was really, Pele was another one. He was a superstar, the best footballer in the world, and that Brazil team, etc. Everybody looked up to them in that fantastic, gold shirts and stuff like that. Always looked at them as, well, this is the team to beat. Loads of different sporting guys, but I suppose those two, Muhammad Ali for obvious reasons and Pele for obvious reasons, because I want to get to where Pele was. I want to get to be a pro and try and do things like that. Cyril Regis, the 3 degrees at West Bromwich Albion, they were more inspiration. It was a lot closer. Andy Gray, as I said, coming up, and people like that. Brilliant for me.
Some amazing people to be inspired by. Final question. What is Kevin Campbell's key to success? If you had to give one tip to someone right now to say, this is how you're going to make it happen, what would your tip be?
Focus on your goal and don't take no for an answer until you get there.
Brilliant. Kevin Campbell, thank you so much. Pleasure to have you on the DDV podcast. I really, really appreciate your time.
Michael, thanks for having me on, and I hope everybody enjoys it.
Well, there we go. A massive thank you to Kevin for his time in joining us on the Desire Dream Vision podcast this week. Over the next couple of weeks, I've got some awesome guests coming your way, so make sure you don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button, and why not give us a like as well. Tell your friends. Remember, tag us on social media And you never know, I might be sending you out one of our Desire Dream Vision baseball caps or woolly hats, although it's getting a bit warmer now, so maybe we'll save the woolly hats for next winter. Have a great rest of your day, whatever you're doing. Thanks so much for checking us out. Remember, you can follow us on social media. Give us a follow at Michael Kern and use the hashtag of DDV podcast.